All right. We are live. So, as people are tuning in, welcome to another episode of the Managing Partners podcast. Today, I'm going to have a special guest, Jeffrey Gross, out of Philadelphia. Jeffrey, or Jeff, as I've been calling him. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, you can call me Jeff. That's fine. And I appreciate you for having me on.
Yes, sir. So, let's get right into it. Let's learn more, introduce yourself, and how you got into this. How did you get to where you are today?
All right. Well, as you indicated, my name is Jeff Gross. I've been doing this for 31 years. I handle workers' compensation claims and litigation. It's really my specialty, and it's really the only thing that I do. So it's very super specialized. I got involved with workers' compensation way back when because of my grandfather. My grandfather wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't interested in workers' compensation. He was an assembly line worker for a local bread manufacturing company called Bond Bread. And back in the 1950s, this woman who was working at the plant, back then you had to have all women had long hair back then for some reason, and you had to have your hair up in a bun or in a net, and she didn't have her hair in a net. She had her hair long, and unfortunately got it caught in the assembly line process, and the assembly line process kind of ripped her hair and her scalp right off. And it was a very traumatic experience. My grandfather was the foreman of the assembly line back then. He saw what was going on. He stopped the presses. He ran down, grabbed her scalp, picked her up. She's bleeding all over the place, rushed her to his car without passing go, drove her to the hospital, waited 5 hours for them to sew her scalp back on, all bloody, and brought her a teddy bear and some flowers, and then went to the management and said, "You really need to take care of this woman. She really got messed up." And the response was, she wasn't following protocol, wearing a hair.
Oh, I can't hear you.
How about now? Better?
Oh, yeah. There you go.
All right. We got interrupted. And as a result of him going to them, they said, no, she's not going to be covered. She wasn't wearing her hairnet. She violated our policy, and we're not going to give her any workers' compensation. And he was livid. And from that day forward, he put that in the back of his head. And when I graduated law school, he said, you can do anything you want. You could be a corporate lawyer, you could be a criminal lawyer, but the little guy needs your help. And he was referring to injured workers. He told me the story. He said, I don't want to tell you what to do, but they're the ones that really need your help. I'm sorry, we got interrupted again. I got
You're a busy guy.
I was very moved by that whole story. Yeah, sorry. I was very moved by that whole experience. So I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I slowly got into it. I took on a case with a over-the-road truck driver driving from Colorado to New York City in a tractor trailer delivering beer. And while he was trying to make good time on the Route 80 in Pennsylvania, he fell asleep at the wheel because he was going nonstop from Colorado to New York. His truck, tractor trailer, and the whole rig flipped over the embankment, and he basically flipped over several times, almost died. They airlifted him to the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, where they did all kinds of surgery on him, and they refused to pick up the claim, saying that he had violated their policy by falling asleep at the wheel, and you're not allowed to sleep on the job. And of course, it was their policy that said if you get there fast, we will reward you with extra money. And so I brought that claim. I remembered what my grandfather had told me. I was really, really interested in this poor guy and in his welfare. And so at the end of the day, we got into court, and it was the most unbelievable experience I had ever had. This was my first actual case for workers' comp back in the early 90s. And I remember the judge dismissing everybody in the courtroom, including the family and my client, and he berated the other side for coming up with such a ridiculous defense to this petition. And the attorney said, "I'm sorry, Judge, I can't I can't do anything about it. My client won't pick up this claim, won't pay this claim. And he said, okay, Mr. Gross, go ahead and fulfill your obligation and satisfy the burden of proof. And I litigated the whole claim, and I won everything I could imagine, plus some. And it was very rewarding. It was at that time that I decided this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So now I represent injured workers who have had disabling injuries at work, and it's very rewarding. I love what I do. One of the few lawyers that love what they do.
Well, that's an amazing story. So, what sets you on this path and makes you so passionate about it. So that's really cool. I mean, it's not a good story, of course, in the beginning, but it's what you got you interested in this. So, pretty cool. Obviously, check out Jeff at this website here. I'll post that in the comments as well. Check out his firm in Philly. So you kind of covered a little bit your firm and basically what you covered. Does your firm cover other practice areas, or is that specifically what you focus on?
Our niche is workers' compensation. Yeah, our niche is workers' compensation. We handle workers' compensation soup to nuts, from the beginning aspects of the claim till the appeal process and any kind of litigation on the appeal to settlement of the entire claim. And it's a great practice.
Nice. And do you obviously practice in the state of Pennsylvania? Do you mainly focus in the Philadelphia area, or do you kind of cover the whole state as far as the cases are concerned? I assume you get referrals probably all around.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We do mostly referral work. Most of the attorneys that refer cases to us are ones that do not handle workers' compensation claims. Most of the attorneys that refer to me handle third-party litigation, which we usually in turn refer back to those attorneys. So it's a very nice referral practice, because the attorneys that do not handle the workers' compensation claims are very happy to send those claims to us. We handle them, like I said, from soup to nuts. We pay a referral fee to the attorney that's referring it. At the same time, when we have a third-party claim that arises out of a work-related injury, we'll refer those back to the attorneys that refer us those claims.
Very nice, very nice. And yeah, I hear quite a bit of that from law firms all around the country, especially ones that specialize. That they get quite a bit of referrals when they do so, versus some of the firms have 30 different practice areas that they focus on. So very cool. So next question is really any trends that you see. So in these trends, maybe economic, it could be government related. Anything you see positively affecting your firm or negatively affecting your firm that you see happening? Obviously COVID aside, I would say.
Well, actually, with COVID, I see trends. And as a matter of fact, the whole COVID element has brought upon a trend with workers' compensation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because as you have surmised, most courts have been closed during the COVID pandemic. Workers' compensation was not closed. Workers' compensation decided, the powers that be decided that they would do virtual hearings. We would have virtual depositions. We would have virtual mediations. I meet with my clients virtually so that they don't have to come into my office. I have everybody sign fee agreements and authorizations by DocuSign. I have my clients execute the documents that needed to be, affidavits that are necessary for the process, all done by DocuSign. When we have our hearings, the documents get uploaded into the workers' compensation automated integration system, and then the judge has all the exhibits, and the judge can look at them, make a ruling. We have our briefs filed online. It's an amazing trend towards the electronic practice of law. And what I've noticed, most interestingly, to answer your question about trends, is that I kind of am able to do this now throughout the entire state. Pennsylvania is a relatively big state. I mean, it takes 6 hours to get from Philadelphia to Erie. And I would never normally do that to handle a hearing. I would normally refer that out to another workers' compensation firm out in Erie. But with the advent of the pandemic and the virtual hearings, I've been able to take cases in Pittsburgh and in Erie and in Scranton and in other parts of the state that I would normally not get to. And I'm able to handle those cases competently through the virtual process. And it becomes a lot more efficient. So everybody across the state that practices workers' compensation, while the pandemic is not a good thing, was very happy with the onset of this virtual practice, because now we can do this in a much more productive manner. If what would otherwise take me a day to handle a hearing out in Erie, I can handle in 10 minutes from my office or even from my house if I needed to. I have a studio in my house with an office that's conducive to hearings and broadcasts such as this. As you can see, we're in my office right now, but I can certainly handle this from my home, and it makes things a lot easier. I'm more productive, and the clients are happier because they don't have to come in to Center City, Philadelphia, and battle the traffic and whatever else there is in order to come see me. They can just they can FaceTime me, or they can go on to one of my Zoom links or some other social media platform that will allow them to have a direct contact with me from their own home. So it works.
Yeah,
It's been working out very nicely, and the trend has been very good that way.
yeah, it's and what I've been hearing too. So I hear a lot of that, and all the different ways people are connecting with, with their clients and customers, and then also that it's kind of forced a lot of firms, forced them into the future pretty quickly, and as well as the courts as well. Where so I was talking to a gentleman last week, and he was like, "Yeah, it'd probably take the courts 5 or 10 more years before they would get some of the technology or allow for a virtual hearings and stuff like that." And now it's overnight that some of these things had to be put in place. So yeah, while and this what I've heard too, yeah, while the pandemic is not a good thing, there has been some positive side effects, I guess, if you will.
Right. So now at the end of the pandemic, there's a whole scuttlebutt on what's going to happen. Are we going to go back to where we were before? Are we going to maintain our virtual presence? And you would be surprised how many people are in the camp that says, let's keep it this way. It's more productive. We can get a lot more done, and we're just more efficient generally.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm at my home office right now. I was at the office this morning, and I'm spending maybe 3 days a week in the office. But I was 5 days a week in the office and never even considered being at home unless I needed to be. And it's kind of changed up, our whole kind of thought process. And I have employees around, I think 4 or 5 different states anyway. So it's for us, it was, it's natural, I guess, but it's kind of changed our thinking on expanding office space and our footprint from that standpoint. So we're really kind of leaning towards the option of you're either a remote worker or you're going to come report to the corporate office. So I think we're mostly looking at leadership for that. That would have to report. So yeah, very interesting stuff. Has changed a lot of businesses very quickly, and including yours. So really cool to see that opens you up to really doing more cases in a shorter amount of time, really. So,
right.
So you kind of covered a little bit this question, how you get new clients. So it seems like you're really heavy in referrals. Is there any outside of the referrals and kind of getting where you are now? Is there another way you intake clients through marketing, advertising, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on billboards, and I am, I don't do that kind of marketing, but I do a lot of internet. I have a big internet presence, so I'm all over the internet. I've been getting my clients a lot from that element as well. But the majority, like you said, was the referrals. It's nothing like a good recommendation from another lawyer who listened to the facts of the case and said, "Hey, this is a case for Jeff. Let me send it to him." So yeah. works out.
Yeah, you can't beat a referral. That's just I built my whole business on referrals, and to this day, referrals the best thing you can get. It's just at some point you get to the size that referrals are great, but there's only so many, so you kind of have to go to that next level and say, all right, how do we get in front of people when they're looking for us and when they need us? So yeah,
I'll tell you the one good thing about my practice is that I'm very selective in the cases that I take. And the reason I'm selective is because I'm not a mill. I don't take a huge volume of these cases for the sake of running the numbers and making my my overhead satisfied. I take cases because they're meritorious and because there's a reason why my representation is needed. So there's a lot of these firms that will take cases because they have to fulfill the volume requirement and meet their overhead nut. And I don't do that. I concentrate on the actual case merits themselves. So that helps with regard to my success rate as well, which is very high.
Yeah, no, that's good. That you're selective. You're not just all the low level or just any case that comes to the door. That you're jumping on all of them. So I've heard some where they some firms that have 7, 8 full-time people just screening calls, from all the leads that they spend money to generate. But it's a lot to work them down to what's the real cases that they can go after or want to go after.
Right.
So,
and the other element is that I have a personal relationship with all of my clients. So I give them all my cell phone number, which is very rare for lawyers to do because I encourage communication. I think communication solves a lot of issues and problems. And so they all have my phone number, my cell number, and if they need me, they can get me anytime. And you'd be surprised that none of them really abuse it. They all call me when they really need me, and they text me often. Texting is another good advent of the trend. I can answer a lot more clients' questions with texting than I can by calling each and every one of them. But one of the good things is that by communicating with all of them, I bring them in as if they're part of my family, and I treat my clients as if they are part of my family. And if you ask any of my employees or my staff or my attorneys that work for me, you will see that we are one big happy family. So it works out very well that way.
Absolutely. Communication is huge. I know within my business, communication is something they're always trying to work on and always trying to improve. And it just always seems, if I can find a root of an issue or with a client or a situation, then it usually comes back to some kind of communication or break in communication. So I love that. That's great that you're doing that and can give that number out. And I'm going to give that number out here in a few minutes. So call Jeff if you need to.
Please feel free to do that.
Yeah. Oh, here.
Exactly.
You can reach Jeff, and I'll post this at the end too. But yeah, how about that? Jeff puts his cell phone out. Got to get a hold of him. That's excellent. So if you need help, anyone watching or this show or another managing partner attorney in Pennsylvania or outside of Pennsylvania that has a good referral for Jeff.
That's right. We also handle New Jersey claims. In case, you wanted to know that too.
I did not know that. So I do have a couple questions coming in here. So this is from Sean Ragsdale. So B2B referrals versus client referrals. So I guess you have other law firms sending you referrals, but I would assume, based on what you told me, that I assume your clients also are sending some referrals.
My clients send a lot of referrals. You'd be surprised the linkage that exists from client to client to client. There's one particular family. I don't know how they all have all these issues, but I represent this one family. They have, I'm going to say, 10 people in their family have had issues with regard to workers' compensation, and they'll also call for other problems, and I'll refer them to other lawyers to handle those specific issues. But definitely clients will send me their friends and family, coworkers. I've had a lot of that.
which means you're doing a good job. You're communicating, and they're willing to tell someone else to reach out to you if they have a problem. So that's how referrals work.
Absolutely.
And same with the lawyers. I'm going to refer you stuff if
Exactly.
you don't do a good job. They trust that you're going to do a good job. There's another one from Sean here. What's the lingo? He says workers' comp or workman's comp. Ever hear one used more than the other?
Well, no, that's a very interesting question. A very interesting question. The real answer is workers' compensation, and it's worker apostrophe S compensation. Nobody gets it right. But interestingly, when when you're marketing through a website, they'll put in workman's compensation, work comp, WC, all kinds of lingo. And at one time I said, why is there all of these different terms that you're using for the same thing? Why don't you just be consistent and say workers' compensation? And the answer was, well, people search different items. People search for workman's comp. People search for work comp. People search for workers' compensation. So it's the real answer is workers' compensation.
Excellent. Okay, good. That I wasn't sure about that either once I saw the question. So yeah, we do marketing, we do SEO, we do all that stuff. That's what my company does, and it's all about what the potential client is searching and how they're searching. So yeah, 100%. Just like what you're saying is, you gotta be, if you want to show up when they're searching, you need to know what their habits are and try to, at least there's gonna be a half a dozen, maybe a dozen different ways that people are going to search for it. Same client, just different way that they think based on what they've been educated on and what people have said to them. So yeah, that's where it gets a little difficult. And then you need to rank for those. You need to have ads or SEO. You need to rank for those specific different searches. And they always, Google's pretty smart. So it's just leading up to one, the correct search. But yeah, that's pretty interesting how you have to account for all that stuff.
I'll tell you one more thing is that people, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Search unemployment compensation. Yeah, people will also search unemployment compensation thinking they mean workers' compensation. And so you have to account for those kinds of inquiries also.
Yeah, so I think the thing, people, if they're not educated, they think this is what they're looking for, or they've been told by someone. So yeah, you gotta be there when they're searching for the right thing or something, a variant of that. And then you get that call and you say, oh, actually, here's what you're looking for. And then you can hopefully refer them off to another law firm as well.
Right.
So is there, I know you said you're online. I checked out your website. Is there a particular marketing strategy that's worked well? And I'll just kind of load that with what has worked well for you. Is it advertising, or is it SEO, or is social media performed at all? Like what, from a digital standpoint, I guess, has produced?
Definitely SEO. There's too many, websites out there that don't have appropriate SEO applications, and they just exist. And you might find them 3 pages down the road, and that's not an efficient posting. And that listing would be flawed if you just leave it there. You have to really do things. You have to write articles. You have to have some kind of informational element where I can give information out, and that's part of the SEO package. So the more content that I put on my site, the more I stream that content both on Facebook and on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and other places. That's how the SEO starts to develop, and it expands that way.
Yeah, I love that. So you're repurposing too. So you're not just writing an article, but you're getting that information out on Facebook, Twitter, and other places as well, so that you're dispersing that same information more than one place, right? So, yeah, very good strategy.
Right.
We do that with this show. So we will we're live right now, right? And then this will be on YouTube, LinkedIn, and then we'll develop a dozen pieces of content. This goes on a website. You'll have your own page. And so we, repurpose all that and disperse it as much as we can. So yeah, great strategy, repurposing, great SEO strategy as well. So really cool. I expected that would be your answer, was SEO. So
one of the other things that I do is I'm frequently on the radio. I have a radio show that I do monthly, and I'm a guest on another firm's radio show
cool.
that they do periodically, and I'm also a guest on my medical coordinator has her show, and I'm on that, and so I'm constantly on the radio, and that definitely helps. That helps to bridge the gap between the referral network. So if I'm hosting a show, let's say, I will have a third-party attorney that will be my guest on the show, and I usually try to pick people that I really don't know that well, and I develop a rapport with them, and at the end of the show, we end up having a nice business relationship where either he or she and I will exchange cases and refer cases back to each other.
I love that. That's a good strategy. Yeah, I like that a lot. So, yeah, and just to be honest, this is where we like to come on and meet, managing partners and other attorneys. And how are you doing what you're doing? How are you marketing? How are you growing your firm? It gets us to, you're familiar with me and us, and gets us in front of you. And then we're also looking for anything that we, can use that can help us. Hey, wow, they're doing something different. It's unique. So yeah, very good strategy. I like that a lot. I had a friend of mine here in my area, Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, who was a financial planner in his own business, and he had hooked up with a magazine where they would do a whole page spread, say on someone like yourself, and he would go in and interview them for the write-up of the magazine. Well, then he was sitting with like these CEOs and owners. Well, he's a financial planner, so he get to have all these conversations, and his part of the deal was they might say, "Hey, well, what do you do?" Oh, well, I'm a financial planner and I work with CEOs and stuff. So yeah, it worked very well for his business. To him, to get featured in a magazine, but he got to do the interviews, and I think he even paid money to the magazine to get that opportunity. So, but I think it did a very good job for him. So, love that strategy. I got another question here from Sean's asking a lot of questions. I like it. Is that the Who's Who in Philly labor show? Oh, would that be the show?
It is. It is. There's a Who's Who in Philly labor show. There's a Lawyer to Lawyer network show that I'm involved in. Then My Philly Lawyer, who is the firm that I generally co-broadcast with, is a third one. So yeah, that's one of them.
Excellent. Good research, Sean. So you're all over the airwaves. You're everywhere. That's good. I like it. I haven't been to Philly in quite a long time. And obviously since the pandemic, I haven't ventured out too much, but I do like up there. It's been quite a while since I've been there. All right, last questioner.
Yeah, you'll have to come up and I'll take you out for a cheesesteak.
I'm down with that. I can definitely do that. It's not too far. I'm in Virginia, so where I'm from, it's only a few hours, honestly. Sure. So we'll arrange something. Anything on your agenda? You are. How many partners you have there with your firm?
I missed that. I didn't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry. How many folks are with your firm?
So I have 4 attorneys that handle workers' compensation, and they're very competent. They've been doing it for years. I have a bunch of support staff, and I have a medical coordination team that I use to handle the medical aspect, the medical management aspect of my clients' cases. So if there's an MRI that's needed, they get it like that. if there's an EMG that's needed, or there's therapy, or there's other diagnostic studies, or surgical consults. We're in for all of that, and it works out really nicely. It's like a well-oiled machine.
I like it. Any plans, any agenda items, I guess, for this year or coming years, new strategies, marketing strategies, growth? You got what's the goals looking like for the next year or so?
So I've been planning I have a whole strategy with regard to my business development of my firm. And, I certainly don't want to grow too quickly, because then I won't be able to satisfy the demand for the claims. But I've been able to, from the get-go, from 31 years ago, slowly grow the firm. And I started off by, if I could sign 2 cases a week and settle 1 case a week, I'm on a nice slow growth pattern. At this time, it's growing a lot more than that. I have, many cases I sign a week and many cases that I settle, but I always try to focus on signing more cases than I'm settling. The compensation for my firm is done on a hybrid basis. It's very well diversified. I look at this as a marketable securities approach. So the weekly benefit checks that my clients get, that would be construed as bond income. And the lump sum settlements that come into play, those are construed generally as growth stocks. And so by having a combination of both, I'm able to continuously have an autonomously run company, such that the firm works really well, and it grows smoothly without any hiccups. Once it gets past a certain point where people are really pulling their hair out, we'll add more people, we'll add more attorneys, and it's been working out great. I can't complain.
The very awesome strategy. I like that a lot. So I think that's something that we used to always be a project or hourly based firm ourselves, and it sounds like what you have more now is it's more predictable long-term revenue versus just quick hits or whatever. So that's interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So
the structure of the claim, the structure of the claims are such that there's a handful, or more than a handful. There's a whole bunch of clients that are getting weekly benefits, and they get you get 2/3 of your gross average weekly wage in workers' compensation. And so while they're getting their benefits and I'm getting 20% of that, there's a whole bunch of those fees that come in on a weekly basis. But then at the end of the day, the insurance companies and my clients both would like to leave the system on amicable terms, where they make a lump sum settlement, move on. Okay.
Yep, you're back.
Sorry about that.
That's
so
I put the phone number up and people are calling you.
There you go. And so we have a situation where we get the settlements as well. And so if you combine the two, it's a very nice, stable way of practicing. So for my clients, it's a great thing because they don't have to worry about the stability of the firm. For my referring attorneys, that's great because then they'll see a referral stream and then they'll get a lump sum. And it works out really, really well, actually.
Excellent. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I honestly, that's something new for me. So I didn't know that. There was those different ways to handle that. So, all right. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I still want to chat with you after this. So just hang on once we end live. But anything that you'd like to share? One of the things I wanted to mention out is you got your pilot's license. That's pretty cool. But anything else you want to share that's coming up? Any big news with the firm? Anything you'd like to share there? If not, we'll kind of post some information about how to contact you, and we'll wrap it up.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned I have my pilot's license. That's really what I wanted to do. when I was a kid. I wanted to be a pilot. I was fascinated with airplanes. And, you know, my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather and my father all said, oh, no, no, you can't be a pilot. It's too dangerous. Why don't you be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, you know, something along those lines. And so when I was in college, I was actually pre-med and decided this isn't for me. I was too much interested in the business element. So I became a business and accounting double major and focused on business. And after I graduated, I decided I'm going to law school for other various reasons. And so I became a lawyer and I used my business background to do what I'm doing. But I've always wanted to be a pilot. So in 2004, I ended up literally finishing court early. And I went out. It was a beautiful, beautiful premature sunny day in the 60s in March in 2004. And I went out and I just watched. I used to watch the planes take off and land. I'm a little weird that way. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to go in and talk to the director. And I did. And I said, hey, I'm really interested in getting my license. And sure enough, he said, let's go for a ride. I went for a ride. I said, here's my credit card. Next thing I knew, 5 months later, I had my pilot's license. And I
Wow, that's awesome.
everything. Yeah.
So you got to fly that
Makes
same
your
day
world
when
smaller.
I was saying when you said you wanted to fly that day, they just say, "Hey, let's go." That's cool.
They said, let's go. And they took me up. And as a matter of fact, I've used it several times for clients. I took a case out in Western Pennsylvania way back when. And it was such a significant case that I felt the necessity for me to go out there instead of referring it to a local counsel out there. And I literally flew out there. And when I landed, my client was in a wheelchair on the tarmac with his wife waiting for me. And it was like, I was like a superhero flying in and helping this guy. And he was so grateful that I personally came out to help him. I'll never forget it. It was one of the most rewarding things ever.
That's really cool.
So, real good.
So also, you can fly here, get me, and then we'll go back and have lunch in Philly.
There you go.
All right, I'll be waiting.
Okay.
I'll wait the runway. Well, Jeff, man, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a really interesting story, and you seems like you love what you do, and you got a great practice, and so kudos to that, and wish you all the best. If you want to contact Jeff, he's gracious enough to give out his cell phone number, so reach out to him. Again, if you're an attorney, Jeff looked like a good person you can refer to. Also, check them out at their website address. I'll put that in the comments as well for everybody to be able to go check that out. I'll do that right now. And there we go. I just put that in the comments. So that links out in the comments for anyone watching. And if you are a lawyer, managing partner, need some help with your marketing, that's what we do. ArrayLaw.com. Check us out. And we'll be happy to take a look at what you got. So if that's all, we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.